How's it going, you awesome bunch of bakers? Hope you're on a great day so far. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have another whole grain spelt flour recipe for you. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. This is far from a sweet treat. It is actually a well-balanced treat. Whole grain spelt flour is nutritious and low in gluten. Curd cheese or cottage cheese is high in protein and low in fat. Blueberries are super healthy, we all know that, and honey is probably the best natural sweetener, so I definitely did not feel guilty eating these buns. You can of course modify this recipe, add more fat for softness, use more honey if you want them to be sweeter, adjust the bun to filling ratio, and swap out the berries. They'll be your buns, so make them how you like them. But first let me show you how I made mine, starting with the ingredients. We'll need some whole grain spelt flour, milk, a whole egg, yeast, salt, honey and butter. We'll need an egg yolk and some milk for glazing. For the filling, we'll need some curd cheese, which is kind of like dry cottage cheese. You should be able to find this in any Eastern European supermarket. Since the curd is quite dry, we need to mix it with something, and for that we will use the leftover egg white. The yolk will be for the glaze, the white will be for the filling. We're not going to waste anything. We'll sweeten the filling with a little bit more honey, and of course we'll need some blueberries, or some other berries, it's up to you. As for the equipment, we'll need a tray with some non-stick paper, a bowl for mixing our dough in, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe and a brush. And with all that out of the way, let's begin, starting with the filling. The curd cheese is solid, so we need to crumble it up. The fork will be the best tool for the job here. Break it all up, then add the egg white and honey. Mix until everything is well combined, cover it up and leave it in the fridge for later. You can modify the filling to your liking. Use different sweetening syrups or even sugar. Add some dried fruit like pineapple, figs, raisins, apricots. Sprinkle in some cinnamon perhaps, or grate in some citrus zest. Orange, lemon, lime, they're all good options. You can't really go wrong with this recipe. You could even make a savory version. Skip the honey, reduce the cottage cheese, add some grated cheese, some olives, some bacon, some herbs. I'll leave all those decisions up to you. Okay, while we're prepping stuff, let's just get the glaze out of the way. And for that, you only need to combine the egg yolk and the milk and then mix it all up. Cover it up and leave it in the fridge for later. Now let's move on to the bread dough. Of course, it all starts with temperature control. My kitchen is at around 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to use room temperature water, because even though this is a no-knead bread, it will still warm up slightly as we handle it. And we should get to a final dough temperature of around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And to learn all about no-knead bread dough temperature control, you'll find a video about it in the Principles of Baking playlist. Okay, so let's move on to mixing. In a large bowl, combine the milk, the melted butter, the yeast, the salt, the egg and the honey. Then give it all a good mix, make sure to dissolve the salt completely and disperse all the ingredients evenly throughout the liquid. A whisk is a great tool for this job, but it's not essential. But if you have one, use it. And I guess most of you have a whisk at home. Okay, finally add the flour, grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. The dough will be very sticky, so wet your hands with water when you're handling it. I always like to shape the dough into a nice neat ball before I place it in a bowl for fermentation. And having wet hands makes the job really easy. Okay, let's double check the temperature. If your dough turned out warmer, it'll ferment more rapidly. If it turned out cooler, it will take longer. Adjust the fermentation times accordingly. At 25 degrees Celsius, bulk fermentation should not take more than 1 hour, and we'll give this dough one fold halfway through bulk fermentation. So 30 minutes in, dust the dough with flour, pop it out on the table with the smooth side down, then flatten it out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and back in the bowl it goes. It is still a little bit sticky, so use extra flour if you need to. Okay, now cover it up and leave it to ferment for another 30 minutes. We want the dough to double in size during bulk fermentation. That is a good indicator in most cases. After dividing, weigh your dough ball and divide it into 6 equal pieces. After dividing, each piece of dough will be made up of several smaller pieces, so we'll add the pre-shaping step. It is like a miniature version of the fold that we performed earlier. Flatten the dough, fold the edge over the middle, go around in a circle until you reach point where you started, flip the dough ball smooth side up, tighten it against the table, and that's the pre-shaping done. After pre-shaping, leave the dough to rest for 15 minutes. It is a relatively short resting time, so you don't need to cover the dough balls. They shouldn't dry out. After resting, give them another shaping. The gluten in spelt flour is very weak, so the pre-shaping and final shaping will not only make the dough balls nice and uniform, but it will also ensure that they are nice and tight. Place the shaped dough balls on a parchment paper lined baking tray with a light dusting of flour. We don't want them to stick to the paper because we'll need to lift them up to stretch them out after final proofing. Cover the dough balls up and leave them for the final proof. My kitchen is warmed up slightly to almost 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit, so the final proof was pretty quick. It only took about 45 minutes. During this time, preheat the oven, 170 degrees Celsius or 340 degrees Fahrenheit, fan on, and that will be 190 or 375 without the fan. Okay, these things have puffed up nicely. They're ready for final shaping. Give them a light dusting of flour, dust your fingers as well, gently pick up one of the dough balls, and then using the thumbs and index fingers on both hands, press in the center of the dough and gently stretch it out sideways whilst you're going around in a circle. You want to gradually open it up, creating a thin center and a thick lip around the edge. And here's where you could adjust the filling to dough ratio. Increase the amount of filling by about 20% or even more, then stretch the dough even further and thinner to make them larger. That way they'll be able to accommodate more filling. Alternatively, adjust the dough ingredients down by 20% and make them the same size as I'm doing in the video. Okay, after stretching and before filling, we need to glaze them. Gently brush the whole surface and then continue adding the cottage cheese filling. Each bun will get about a large tablespoon of it. Try to distribute it as evenly as you can. If you're going to double this recipe or triple it or even more, then for the sake of efficiency, I would suggest using a piping bag instead of a spoon. Spread the filling out a little bit and then add the berries. Each bun will easily take about 8 to 10 berries. The more you add, the more the filling will squeeze out. Poke the berries into the filling so they don't stick out too much and fall off. And then finally, you can tidy up the edges one more time. Okay, these bad boys are ready for the oven. They'll take around 25 minutes to fully bake. If they are not browning evenly for any reason, turn the tray around halfway through the bake. Once the dough is golden brown all over, and once the filling has gained some color as well, they're ready. And there you have it. That's how you make blueberry cheesecake buns with whole grain spelt flour. It is a very well balanced snack, and a very tasty one at that. But you should definitely not expect this recipe to turn out like other sweet treats. The sweetness here is minimal, and the texture of the bread is not as soft and bouncy as your typical white bread. It is still nice and soft, but it's got a bit of a bite to it. Adding more fat to the dough, swapping out some of the spelt flour for white wheat flour would change the texture a lot. But I deliberately wanted to make a healthy bun, or at least healthier, and it's definitely a good compromise. It turned out to be a great little tea time snack. And don't forget that you can post pictures of your buns in our Flickr group. You'll find the link down below. So what do you think of this not so sweet treat? Have you ever tried something like this before? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.